ye penny-pinching nerds, rejoice! For this is a season unbound by our bank accounts, unfettered by fees. A legendary age of liberty. This is the summer of free! Hey guys, Pater Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome back. This is our final installment for the Summer of Free 2021 celebration. For each installment this year, I've been recommending at least 2 geek movies, 1 geek TV series, and 1 free console video game with single-player appeal. First, though, a bonus recommendation from a viewer, which you guys are always welcome to submit to me year-round for potential inclusion in each summer's final installment. Thomas Rowe wrote me a number of months ago and said, "Hi, I really enjoy the CGC podcast and look forward to future episodes. Have you heard of the Free Little Library movement?" Free Little Library movement. People set up little weatherproof boxes in their front yards that allow people to share books. You can find them on Google Maps. I was thinking that doing a sci-fi/fantasy book crawl around town might make an excellent video. The little free libraries could also make for an excellent addition to the Summer of Free. So I don't know that I'm going to do the video idea, although it is a cool one, Thomas. But thank you for that recommendation. I had seen these kinds of things now and then around neighborhoods over the years and was a little bit puzzled and curious about them, but I didn't know they had a name and that you could find them on Google Maps. So thank you very much for that information. Again, that's called the Free Little Library movement. All right, so moving on to our movie recommendations. First up, over at tubitv.com, tubitv.com, you can watch the original classic Alien movie directed by Ridley Scott, and then the very popular follow-up from James Cameron, Aliens, and then a little bit unconventional, but I would still recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it, the Aliens versus Predator movie. I did not like the second one, AVP Requiem or something like that, but the first one, where they're fighting like in the Arctic and stuff, I actually thought was pretty cool. If for some reason you have not seen those first two, Alien and Aliens, then you've got to take care of that. Unless you hate horror and aliens and stuff. But those are 2 absolutely classic movies that most sci-fi horror fans will agree are really great experiences. There's mixed opinions about the ones that come after those first 2, but certainly those first 2 are very likely to be worth your time. And then, yeah, Aliens versus Predator. Your mileage is definitely going to vary. If you like the Predator, I certainly do. I'm not bothered by the fact that it's PG-13 because it's mostly alien blood. That's how they got away with it. It is no less, I think, violent and gory for being PG-13. It's just the blood is like green, you know? So, anyway, yeah, those are definitely worth checking out, I think, over at tubitv.com. Also over there, you can watch Odd Thomas. This is a movie that I reviewed. It was, maybe in the first year that I was on YouTube, back in like 2014, I want to say. The IMDb synopsis reads, small-town fry cook Odd Thomas, played by Anton, the late, I should say, Anton Yelchin, who's known for playing Chekhov in the Abrams rebooted Star Trek movies, is an ordinary guy with a paranormal secret. He sees dead people everywhere. When a creepy stranger shows up with an entourage of ghostly Bodaks, predators who feed on pain and portend mass destruction, Odd knows that his town is in serious trouble. Teaming up with his sweetheart Stormy and the local sheriff, played by Willem Dafoe, Odd plunges into an epic battle of good versus evil to try to stop a disaster of apocalyptic proportions, based on the best-selling thriller by Dean Koontz. And this one is, I'm not necessarily the audience for this movie, as I kind of talk about a little bit in my review, but I think there is an audience for it, particularly the audience for the very popular show Supernatural that was on for years on the CW. I think that it has a similar type of feel in many ways, namely that it's, despite it being very much a horror movie and dealing with these dark supernatural things, it's not especially scary. And so, Similarly, I like playing video games that are in the horror genre, but that are not actually scary, like, say, Darkest Dungeon and Castlevania. And so I think for a similar person that maybe likes those trappings of horror, monsters and werewolves and weird creatures of the night, but doesn't want to actually be scared, I think Odd Thomas might be a good fit. Also, if you're a fan of Supernatural, you have a tolerance for TV quality visual effects, and this one feels like TV, really good budget TV quality visual effects. So anyway, that's Odd Thomas. If any of that sounds interesting to you, I would recommend at least watching a trailer for it and looking into it a little bit more. Over at Vudu.com, VUDU.com, I want to recommend the documentary Scary Stories, not to be confused with the movie adaptation Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is a documentary called Scary Stories, and the description reads, explore the history of one of the most controversial works of modern children's literature, the best-selling teen classic Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which scared a generation of young readers and became one of the most banned books of modern times. Scary Stories creates both the ultimate celebration and dissertation of this iconic piece of horror literature. Scary Stories features more than 40 interviews from family members of author Alvin Schwartz to fellow children's book horror authors like R.L. Stine of Goosebumps and Q.L. Pierce, to folklorists, artists, and fans discussing the impact that the books have had on both themselves as well as the culture at large. The documentary also explores the various times in which the books were banned or targeted by parent and religious groups as satanic or otherwise too macabre for its targeted teen scholastic audience. So anyway, I think that a lot of people that are my age, or maybe 10 or so years younger, remember growing up with these Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books, and I think also there a number of us that grew up in the 80s or maybe the 90s remember some of the fear and kind of ignorance that was associated with people regarding things like Dungeons and Dragons, some of these darker forms of entertainment that were being targeted at an audience that includes children, if not specifically children, and so I think that there's definitely some things that you might connect with and enjoy in watching this documentary about the history of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Again, that's called Scary Stories over at VUDU.com. And then for my TV recommendation, last one of the summer, over at TUBITV.com. This one's easy to miss because you actually have to look for it in the kind of children's section, but it's Transformers Generation 1. The entire original animated series of Transformers is available to watch with ads over at TUBITV.com. And, you might find that it's not really worth going back to now, but if you happen to be a parent, or if you happen to have some younger kids in your life that might connect with it and find it interesting, it could be something potentially that you could sit down and watch with them. I did that over the course of one summer. We didn't get through the whole series, not even close, but a couple summers ago, I almost every day sat down and watched an episode with my boys, and they certainly enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it enough for it to be a kind of a cool experience to share with them. So anyway, that's Transformers Generation 1, all 4 seasons over at TUBITV.com. All right, let's talk about console games now. A King's Tale Final Fantasy 15. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up brawler type game available on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, completely free. The description reads, set in a fictitious 30 years before Final Fantasy 15, this game features retro-style inspired graphics centered around a fast-paced combat system with influences from modern gaming. The in-depth combat system blends intense attacks, devastating magic, mighty summons, and unique companion attacks into a singular gaming experience through 3 diverse locations in the world of Final Fantasy XV. Restless before bed, young Noctis asks his father King Regis to tell a fairy tale full of fantasy and adventure instead of just another generic bedtime story. Regis begins with a peaceful day being disrupted when monsters raid the royal capital Insomnia. Young Regis, joined by Wescom, starts his adventure from the royal capital. Eventually, they are joined by friends Sid and Claris, where they travel to the plains of Duscae only to discover a mysterious cave where their enemy resides. Now, I've just played a little bit of this game. I'm generally not drawn to side-scrolling beat-em-up type brawlers, but generally the remarks I've seen about this game have been positive, and I think think Push Square's review, which I'll read a quote from here, represents a lot of what I kind of see being said out there about this game. Push Square writes, "For a free side course of Final Fantasy 15 goodness," and I should add, this is a prequel to Final Fantasy 15. You can play this and have no intention of ever playing Final Fantasy 15, and I think still, it's a self-contained thing because it's a prequel. Anyway, for a free side course of Final Fantasy 15 goodness, you can't go wrong with A King's Tale. It's nothing special, either as a new entry to the narrative or as a 2D brawler, but it provides some depth to a character that lacked development, which in turn further expands upon the personality of Noctis and his relationship with Regis. Despite some lazy moments of design and unnecessarily repetitive combat sequences, there's a couple of hours of fun to be had here, with a surprisingly good combat system and a nice nostalgia-inducing presentation. Now, personally, I don't condone the use of the descriptor lazy in reviews. I think that kind of suggests that you have some inside knowledge as to the developer's work ethic or what's going on in their heart, so I would prefer not to use that kind of language myself, but I think we can extrapolate from that what they intend to say, that there's probably some things in there that seem pretty standard, seem like we've seen this kind of thing before and they're not doing anything really creative or bold in some of these regards. But anyway, as they said, a couple hours of fun to be had here with a surprisingly good combat system and nice nostalgia-inducing presentation. And it is a good-looking game. All right, moving on. Doritos Crash Course. You can get this on the Xbox 360 or the Xbox One, and this uses the avatars that you can build, at least on the 360. I don't know if you can still build them on the Xbox One or the Series X, but it's also playable, by the way, on the Series X. And you use the avatars that you create, so you can make avatars that look kind of like you, to go on this Ninja Warrior-style side-scrolling course where you're jumping and swinging and diving and bouncing around, and it's so easy to biff it and just fall and kind of quote-unquote die, but you respawn instantly, and so there's never that sense of like, you are set back to the last checkpoint, but it doesn't feel deflating, which normally that absolutely feels deflating to me. But this doesn't feel deflating because you're so instantly back into it that it's like there's no time to be disappointed about biffing it. You just laugh and keep going. And you can have up to, I believe, 4 players at the same time playing this game. I played this with my family and with some of my older people in my family, like my parents, that are still able to handle a simple side-scrolling move to the right and jump type of affair, which is basically what it is. There's a little bit more that you can do with the controls for like running and I think sliding and stuff, but it's very accessible to a wide variety of people that maybe aren't necessarily into playing 3D games or that aren't hardcore gamers or anything like that, but have played Mario back in the day or whatever. You can, in a social setting, put this on, and all kinds of people can enjoy picking up the controller. And so this can be a nice kind of a meeting point if you want to share your video gaming hobby and have a video game experience with people that aren't necessarily gamers. This I would highly recommend as something to pull out. I mentioned playing with my family years ago, but also for New Year's Eve, we had a couple of families over that are more our age, actually younger than Holly and I, but aren't necessarily gamers. And so likewise, it was just this great thing that we could enjoy together. And if you're a fan of the old Ninja Warrior TV show on G4 TV, then this will feel vaguely familiar, and I think maybe bring a smile to your face as a result. But anyway, yeah, that's Doritos Crash Course, which you can get on Xbox 360 and Xbox One, and also through backwards compatibility on the Series X. And then finally, on the Xbox One, and also playable on the Series X, is Eternal card game. The description reads, 6 guns and sorcery collide in Eternal, the new strategy card game of unlimited choices and unbelievable fun. Eternal brings AAA pace and polish to the infinite possibilities of a deep strategy card game. The only limits are your own creativity. The Pocket Tactics review is quoted as saying, Eternal has far and away the most generous card acquisition rate of any of these modern digital CCGs. It's only right that a breakneck thrilling game is as open with its goodies as it is creative in its card design. That's a common sentiment about how generous it is with the cards. I have to say, I've not played any multiplayer modes with this one. I've just been focusing on the campaign and have played maybe just an hour or so. It does feel a lot like, or look, I should say, a lot like Hearthstone, but in multiple places, things where I've read up on this game, it's been a common thing that says, you don't need to worry about being tempted to buy cards for this game. You can play the game, have a great time, and it's not even very grindy to get cards to add to your deck and stuff like that. And so this is one, even though it's, you might be scared like, oh, CCG, I don't want any part of that. That's going to just be like microtransaction city and blah, blah, blah. This really seems to be a very generous digital CCG in that regard. And you don't even have to play with other people. I do not like playing with other people. I'm just playing the campaign, and so far enjoying it for what it is. The Game Informer review has a quote which says, a huge variety of game modes and a solid reward structure complement each other, and the draft format is hard to beat if you're a fan of limited style gameplay. If you're looking for something off the well-worn digital card game trail that has a great foundation and lots of room to grow, check it out. And then finally, PC Gamer says, Eternal takes one big step toward Hearthstone from Magic the Gathering. It looks and feels a lot like Hearthstone in practice, but brings back things like instant cards that can be played during your opponent's turn, mana cards with specific colors for each faction, decks with any number of factions mixed, and declaring which of your minions will attack, and then letting your opponent choose their own blockers. The key here is Eternal has managed to make all these things quicker and more satisfying than most other digital CCGs that try them, not sacrificing depth for accessibility. So again, available on the Xbox One and the Series X, that's Eternal card game to finish out our year. By the way, all past summer free installments for this summer and previous years are archived at summeroffree.com. You can also check out over 30 videos on our growing Summer of Free playlist at youtube.com/christiangeekcentral. So even as things are cooling down, if the budget is still tight, you can celebrate the Summer of Free with us all year round. Thanks for watching or listening to the Summer of Free Celebration 2021. That is all for now. I hope this has been fun and helpful for you guys this year when budgets are tight and we're trying to be good stewards of our resources. I am already interested, as I always am, in finding out what kinds of new fun and free things I will have to share with you all next year. Thanks. Bye-bye.